I speak Aussie and Aussie. You know, most of us only do that when we're extremely drunk, yeah? Like, extremely fucking drunk. That fucking chant. It's the same as everyone thinks we drink Foster's beer. We hate that shit. Hate it. No, oh, it's Australian for cat piss. Because I wouldn't drink it. I don't know. Oh, it's good for that. Like but it's just nobody drinks it out here. There's not one. I don't know one person who drinks it. Yeah.
Green light. Go, go, go.
Do you know a mate of mine, right? He's got a bar at his joint. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who knows, man? The internet's sketchy, though. I don't know. Oh, I don't know, man. Fuck, who knows? Probably. Yeah, I think so. That's what he was telling me. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna. Yeah, so that'll be fucking good. I'm, I'm. In one way, I'm glad I'm starting from the rear. It's. Uh, Fucking hell, man. Monza on its own in the dry is enough, you know. Monza in the wet is enough, you know. Then Monza in the wet at night is near suicidal, you know. Fucking hell. Oh, look, I don't mind racing into the night. Racing into the night's really good because you have time to adjust. Yeah, there's time where you can adjust. Yeah, yeah. So your eyes have time, and especially if it's a normal type of a multiplier in the way that it doesn't fucking all of a sudden it's night then fucking day then night. You know what I mean? And you have that progression. Your eyes can adjust to the night. You know what I mean? So, but when it's night from the start, you know what I mean? Like it takes a bit to fucking what's the name, and then throw in the wet. It's a challenge, man. It's a good challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's a fucking nightmare. It's a suicide mission. You know what I mean? One of the easiest tracks will become one of the most challenging just because you throw night and wet at it. You know what I mean? Same as Bathurst, man. You know what I mean? You throw night and wet at that place, and it becomes whoa. Whoa, pucker your arsehole up when you go jump up over the top of fucking skyline. You know what I mean? Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, the last even with just cloudy conditions or whatever, you know, it you know, like you're seeing it with the supercars, they finished in pea soup. You couldn't see literally the press conference after. There's not one of them in the top three that finished at Bathurst that said they could see on the last last 3 laps of the race. Couldn't see one another. So, yes, yeah, you know you can't even see the fucking side or nothing. Nothing. You can't see the side of the. Yeah, you can't see the side of the track. You're going off feel and fucking just fuck instinct, and like you said, muscle memory. Yeah, you know, I mean, where you should be, you know, sort of thing. All of them said it's the fucking scariest to what's the name, you know, racing night and wet would be even, you know, a little bit better, you know, than racing in that foggy pea soup shit. You know, apparently they close it down when one marshal point. How long have I got? Ah, fuck, ages. Yeah, Bathurst 12 hour is a what's her name? I've been to that a few times, and yeah, she's a cool event. It's good watching them go over there at night in the clear, like in no rain or nothing like that. Yeah. Yeah, hearing those Mercs go across the top of the mountain, it's just, yeah, it's like thunder, you know, coming. You can hear them, and then once the exhaust note and they get to sort of beside you, oh, it's unreal. It's fucking awesome. One of the best sounds you'll ever hear. Same with there was a couple last year that fucking were custom made like fucking cars for fucking that particular event. There's a fucking dude who builds them up in Queensland. They're called Mark cars, so MARC cars. So they're shaped like sort of DTM type Mercs and that kind of thing, Chevys and shit like that, Mustangs and that. Real wild pieces of equipment, man. Those fucking things. There was like 3 or 4 of them, and one was like this chrome blue. Complete chrome blue. It was like, I think it was like a Merc, had a Merc body on it, GT3 style, but race under a different kind of an outlawy sort of a class and that there, and they raced the 12 hour as well. They were wicked. The Mustang, one of them, I've never heard a car like it in my life. Yeah, big fucking Coyote engine in it. Oh, it just howled, mate. You could hear it everywhere. Just howled. And they had the biggest exhaust system on it when it came across Skyline. Our where we set up camp and that up there is not very far from there. So we go there and watch them there, and then just move up and down like the top of Skyline, and then, you know, to the Great, and then go all the way back to the top of McPhillamy and shit like that, and just walk around the fence line and that and watch them go over the top. It's magic, you know, especially when it turns from day to night, you know, and all the lights come on and they've got all the neons going and shit, all the different colours and shit they put on the cars. Yeah, it's a bucket list thing. I wouldn't miss one now. I've been going for the last, 7 years to the 12 hour and that, every year. And, yeah. I missed Bathurst because my wife made me choose. I could either go to the Bathurst 1000, right, or I could go to the 12 hour. So I chose the 12 hour. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, mate, you got to do it. Put it on your bucket list to do. Is a must-do thing, mate, because they're just incredible. You know what I mean? So really, really great things to watch. I would love it if Bathurst was longer. If it was like, you know, a 24-hour race type thing, it'd be awesome if it was 24 hours. But 12 hours is a big endurance race, man. That's huge. 12 hours in the car. Oh, Daytona would be phenomenal, man. That would be so cool. Yeah. Or Watkins, either one would be just fucking brilliant. You know what I mean? Yeah, mate, that would be brilliant. Fucking any one of them. Doesn't matter. Just an endurance event with GT3 cars, all the, you know, because we don't get that many and we don't get none of the prototype cars or nothing. So it's strictly just the GT3. So, and the field, I think the field for the next one's like 30 plus cars. So they're bringing there's 2 Mustangs coming. There's another couple of Ferraris, Mercs, and I think there's a couple of more Audis as well. So it'll be good. Yeah, it's just amazing. The sound. It's the sound. It's you get drunk on the sound. Yeah, all the different cars. Just get to it, mate. Put it on your list. Make some time in your schedule, mate, and get to them. There's just the endurance events are something to behold. They really are. In real life, they really are something really cool. Daytona would be really cool because you get to see them go up on that part of the oval. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, I'd like to go there and do that. But Bathurst is pretty cool. It's one of the it's one of the events that a lot of endurance drivers want to do. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, Rossi does it. I've seen Rossi do it from the very start. His first year there, and and then his last year, man, that he went there. Just unbelievable. What a dude, man. That guy can drive. All right, I watched him in MotoGP a few times down at Phillip Island, and I knew he could ride, but he can drive. Yeah, he can really drive. I seen him hold off like Matty Campbell and the likes of like full seasoned GT3 drivers, and he held them off in the lead, man, and his teammate and everything, and defended like a fucking like a demon, mate. Yeah, such good car control over the top of the mountain for a dude that doesn't. It's not a regular thing for him to go to Bathurst. Oh, God, what a talent! Yeah, what a talent! Yeah, an extremely nice dude too to meet. Yeah, yeah. Not like how you'd think he would be. Like what's his name? He had plenty of time for me and the 4 other dudes I was with. Talking to us and shit for at least about 10, 15 minutes, man, as we were walking along with him and shit. Yeah. He signed everything we wanted to sign, took selfies with him and all sorts, man. So he's a really cool dude. Yeah. And can drive. Definitely drives a BMW very, very well. But I think anyone can. Look what Shane Van Gisbergen's doing in NASCAR. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, like, if you've got talent, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He's, like, the number one threat when they go to a road course or a street track now. So if he can get his oval game up to the same standard, he'd be a real threat for the championship, man. Yeah, I reckon. And that's not just being a fan of SVG. I just think because he has that much talent, like Kyle Larson, who can transfer it into whatever the fuck he wants, like a fucking sprint car or whatever, you know what I mean? And, or whatever he decides to, Indy car, whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think these guys have got that talent that doesn't matter what you put them in. They just do really well in it. How can you? Yeah, I mean, look at Rossi. He come from 2 wheels to 4 wheels and adapted to it like a duck to water, mate. You know what I mean? Like he just, it takes guys that come up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that I think just his talent to be able to do that is just unlike. It's freakish. It puts him up in the realms of like, Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher and those types of names. When you're talking about just that talent, that innate talent to be able to transfer. But I mean, Rossi's a freak. He was doing rallycross and all sorts of shit and rally and that sort of shit while he was racing and dirt bikes and shit and racing all that shit when he was racing MotoGP. So, and he had that test of a Formula One car. He tested a Ferrari GT3 car. When he got to Ducati, he got a fair few more opportunities just because of that link to that fucking Italian brand, so it opened up more doors for him. And BMW knew it, I mean? They just seek out excellence, you know what I mean? BMW, so there's a fucking a documentary on BMW, and I think it's either their GT3 car, I think it's their GT3 car program that they were doing, right? And the goal was to finish somewhere at Daytona and that, and I watched this documentary on them, and those guys go about their racing unlike any other, I think. Just the tech that BMW put into their cars is, unbelievable. Ford has that. Like Audi, like Merc, like a lot of them. They run a factory type of deal, Lamborghini, all that kind of stuff, Ford has that. Ford has a very, very same approach to the BMW. They just do it they have just so much money. That's it. They just keep throwing money at it, So where BMW has all that excellence, same as Porsche, they have all that. That's why they're so successful. You never see a GT3 broken down from an engine malfunction or something. It's always something to do with the front of the car. It's been hit or something like that, where they're sensitive, sort of thing. So they just have that next level. Mind you, I've seen them. I've seen Ferraris and I've seen fucking what's the names break down because of mechanical fault, but it's more suspension-y type fucking what's the name related than engine type malfunction. You know, I think, I think so. Yeah, it just seems to be that trend. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, they don't run them. They don't run them so lean anymore. They just can't. They just can't afford to. I don't think. So, but these cars are always built for endurance anyway, not short stuff. So that they need that reliability. You know, the crown isn't won by doing fucking 16 sprint events. It's won by doing like fucking 12 or 16 fucking endurance events that are over like 6 hours. Average. I think the shortest one that they do on the tour is like a 3 hour event. You know, yes, they do each series in each country does do a different version, right? But they all do an endurance. You know, so the Asia Pacific, so the realm over the what's name over here, the Bathurst 12 hour, then they got 3 hour events, 6 hour events. There's no really short shit. Everything's long. Whether there's at least one driver change even in the 3 hour stuff. So oh yeah, Macau is next level, man. It should be in the game. Like I've said to a lot of people, there's probably about, you know, 20 tracks that you could add to this game that this series actually goes to. You know what I mean? There's a lot of American tracks, Asian ones, there's European ones. We don't go to Hockenheim, mate. You know what I mean? We don't go to, you know, there's a lot of tracks we know that they go to Dubai and the Arab Emirates and they go to like Marina Bay and all that. There's a lot of street tracks that the series goes to, that we don't do. That'd be awesome street tracks in a GT3 car. You know, that'd be next level. You know. No, that's it. It's all permanent road courses. Bathurst is the only like technical street track because they drive on it, and Nords, of course, Nordschleife because they drive on it on daily. So they're technically track. But apart from that, no dedicated like in between buildings, concrete walls, all that shit. No. There's word at the end of November that we'll get an update with a couple of American street tracks, but yeah, with the Corvette as well. So we get the Corvette, another GT2 car or something like that. The word keeps changing, but there's apparently an update with a couple of dedicated American street tracks. So that'd be like Detroit or Chicago or somewhere else like that. You know what I mean? And we get the Corvette. So the 2024 model. So I don't know what the C7, C6. What I don't know the models of them. C. Yeah, mate. Yeah, by the look of it. Yep.
30 seconds.
Fucking hell. What?
Stay in double file.
Fucking hell, Enzo. Fuck. This is bullshit. Fuck. Fucking hell. It's just pea soup.
Green light. Cruise okay.
Oh, God.
stop. We start clear. Come on, go, go, go.
Yeah, good race. Yeah, she's a tough one in the rain. Thanks, mate. Yeah, just was just a little bit off with me consistency towards me stop, mate. So yeah, but yeah, it was a decent strategy. I just wanted to stay on hot tyres, you know, and just wait for that rain, see if the rain was going to stop, and leave it as late as I possibly could before boxing. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good just maintaining the gap and sitting back there, and yeah, just this is the first time I've taken the Mustang in the wet. So I've driven it a lot, but not in the wet. So it was good. Yeah, no, it was good. I was happy with that. P3's where it's at. Well done, mate, on P2. It's good. Yeah. Yeah, excellent job, mate. Well done. Yeah, the longest strategy. I like sitting in the seat for a while before I pit. So I always like that. I think if you can maintain that rhythm, you know what I mean, and keep in it, then yeah, why not stop a bit later? Yeah, that's it too. You know, it's just that, and you can just play the longer game and fully fuel it, and then just try and maintain your consistency throughout your stint, and just see where it ends up when you go into pit. You know, it's different, obviously different if you've got a pit window. You know, that rules out that sort of thing a little bit. Doing that sort of strategy, waiting until like less than 5 minutes to go to pit. Because you got to pit when the window tells you to pit, but. I like sort of mixing it up in the sprint races, sort of doing, sometimes I'll come in really early, you know what I mean, and do the whole early thing, and then try and go for the overcut, and then other times I'll try and do the undercut and try and keep going, sort of thing, but it's tricky, the conditions, they're tricky. Yeah, it seemed to, like you said, out of Parabolica, there seemed to be just a whole lot more water there gathering. I felt the Mustang it really didn't like going through that much fucking water. So, but I noticed that when you said it straight away, I knew probably a lap before. Oh, geez, it's gaining it. It's got a bit more water there, and there was a couple of other spots as well, into a scary. And that as well. There seemed, just seemed to be a bit more water there, like in the middle part towards the stop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was sketchy there towards the middle chunky part of the race. So it seemed to get heavier, and then real sketchy. Yeah, sketchy as fuck, mate. Yeah, she was sketchy. All right. Yeah. You just gotta, you just catch those big patches and puddles of water, and it just, lose contact completely, so it was kind of better to stay off the line a little bit and try and go sort of, especially going onto the main straight. There was a massive puddle there on the left-hand side that you just couldn't, when you sort of full throttle there 100%, it just lost it. So I come over a little bit further right, tried to miss the whole thing altogether. Yeah, no. And being so flat, there's no runoff here. So it's just the water sort of lays there. It stays there, There's no runoff or camber to the track, really. So, but good race. It was good. I really thoroughly enjoyed that one. Yeah, just focus central when you're fucking running in the rain. So... You just got to, I like it. And at night's even more challenging, so. But